part of the Earglue Media family of podcast.
You're listening to the Cantina Cast, your home for thought-provoking Star Wars talk. Join Albert and Jonesy in breaking down the latest news, trailers, movies, and of course, your favorite characters from a galaxy far, far away.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Cantina Cast. This is episode 293, Age of Resistance, Kylo Ren. My name's Albert Padilla, and we're coming off the successful Snoke one-shot comic by writer Tom Taylor, and he's brought back another tale from everyone's favorite bad boy of Star Wars universe, Kylo Ren. And speaking of bad boys, please welcome back to the show after being paid for his PTO while I was not. I'm talking about none other than our original bad boy, Jonesy. Jonesy, welcome back to the show, my friend.
Hey, I appreciate it. You need to get a better agent, man. So
yeah,
it's all on the agent. You got to have the right choice, and it's
negotiations.
I guess it's State Farm. I don't know. I watch too much football.
Yeah.
That joke did not hit the mark at all.
Did not. No, it fell flatter than the Miami Dolphins record right now.
Oh snap! Or the Redskins.
Yep. Well, let's.
This is all these inside jokes. All right, let's go.
Yeah, right. Rolling on. Let's get to the news, and then we'll get into the comic book.
God, that was some excitement.
Spoiler alert. No, I don't know. We'll touch on that here in a sec. All right. Triple Force Friday, October 4th. We're getting there's all kinds of stuff coming out now. We've seen the trailer. Star Wars show had some video recently of all of the actors from both The Mandalorian, The Rise of Skywalker, and even Jedi Fallen Order. The actor's name who plays the main character, which I think he plays Cal, but I don't remember his name.
Right.
Anyways, all these toys are coming out. This is going to be the toys and merchandise for all three of those IPs or titles or whatever are going to be coming out here October 4th. I guess the question is, are you going to be doing anything? And have you historically done anything? I know I've gone out a couple times. I think I do it every year, but last year I didn't pick up as much with Last Jedi as I did with The Force Awakens. But any plans for you to head out there midnight?
No. I haven't really done the collecting thing in a while. Like I started doing sideshow toys from time to time, but yeah, the rest of them, the Black Series always seemed to get me a little bit excited until I see them and then I see the price tag. Cause I think the Black Series are going for like $20 these days, something like that.
$20, yeah.
Yeah. And so it's just, where am I going to put this stuff? I just don't know where to put it. Although I saw one item on the Triple Force Friday, whatever this thing is going to be called, that I had to if you don't get it, I got to get it to you for Christmas. You know, it's what I'm talking about.
Oh, no.
The Mandalorian lunchbox.
Oh, I thought you were talking about the Maz Kanata.
Oh, no. I didn't see the Maz Kanata one.
No.
You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to get that one of her and Chewbacca, though, on his shoulders. I'm going to get that blown up to a big old canvas for you.
The Master Blaster wannabe that they're doing there.
Yeah. Put that in your bag.
I hadn't seen the Mandalorian lunchboxes. That sounds intriguing.
Yeah, it's a metal lunchbox too, so it's old school.
Nice.
And it's got that style too, like when we were growing up. So I think it's kind of up your alley. I can't believe you didn't know this.
I did not know that. I have I've got a Return of the Jedi lunchbox, like an original one that's sitting right behind me. Actually, I'll post a picture of that. Wife won't let me take that to work though. She's pretty much nixed that. So,
but I mean, did anything else stand out to you? That I got to really have that.
I mean, I've seen a lot of them. A lot of the stuff's been leaked already.
Right.
You know, a lot of the pop figures. I may pick up the pop figures just because that's usually what I go for these midnight opening type things. But beyond that, I don't know. Like last year, I picked up the Porg. It was a very spontaneous thing. I wasn't planning on buying the little Porg that walked around and was fluffy, and I thought that's perfect for my daughter. So I may just be inspired by things when I get there, but I mostly go just for the experience. I like that stuff. It reminds me of waiting in line for movie theaters, and buying tickets and that sort of thing. Because there are a number of people, at least in my area, that wait out there, and usually out there, a good hour or 2 hours just to be first in line. It's going to be kind of weird though this year because Toys R Us isn't around,
right? And
that's usually where I went, and they usually had some pretty good giveaways, and they were really welcomed us with open arms. I mean, they were just as excited as we were going in. So I don't think I really had the same thing. I think with Force Awakens, I went to Toys R Us, and then I ran by Target and maybe Walmart because they had some exclusives or something like that. I forget now.
Yeah, but they're always so hit and miss with what they have out, or even if they're doing it, or how much they do, or how much effort they put into it. It's really inconsistent. And I know that was a huge frustration with Last Jedi, was that even the stores that were doing it just didn't have a lot, and then certainly didn't put a lot out, even if they had it.
Yeah. Yeah, that was really hard. Toys R Us definitely was probably the better of all of them from my perspective. But yeah, I mean, I'll probably head out there again and pick up a few things. I won't go crazy. Like you said, I'm running out of room for all this junk.
Yeah, because even the Lego sets, I'm a Lego collector, and I love not just the Star Wars Legos, but we do a bunch of different IPs. And even those, I'm like, they've got like a new Resistance Y-Wing, but it's a Y-Wing. Same with an A-Wing. The only one that looked interesting was Kylo's shuttle, which I think they already released. Yeah. But I really just want it for the minifigs because they've got the Sith Trooper in there, and they've got a pretty good looking Kylo Ren, of course, with the helmet, and then a couple of Knights of Ren, I believe, too. So I like those. I like when I can get the unique minifigs, but this one is, God, how many pieces is this going to be? This is 1,000 pieces. So that's usually, pushing $100. I think that's about right.
Yeah.
Yeah. About 10 cents a piece is usually the price to brick ratio. So
wow.
If I'm doing
I did not know that.
Something like that.
Yeah. It's about right. All right. Well, if we, when I go, I'll post pictures of my experience. Hopefully you guys are excited about that. I know it's a big deal. So
I'm not gonna lie though, those Boba Fett and Jango Fett socks kind of striking a chord.
Okay, I didn't see those.
Yeah, man, you got to go to this list. I mean, it's not,
I guess
it's nothing really super interesting, but there's a couple items in here. I just miss me getting old, and that these things are interesting to me, and like weird, crazy socks these days.
Yep, that's what happens when you get old, kids.
Yep,
then you die.
Congratulations.
All right, Jedi Fallen Order Cal's mission trailer came out today. We're recording this on the 26th of September. Did you get a chance to watch this?
I did, and it's not bad. It's actually a pretty...
I'm excited. I thought it was awesome.
I mean, you get a little flavor for what's going on. Of course, you get the second sister, and like her floating down was pretty neat, and the billowing cape and all of that was kind of a nice visual, but a lot of people in our circle are pretty excited about this game. They've already pre-ordered it and are really looking forward to this. I think this drops in mid-November, right?
Yeah, November 15th. I put my pre-order in a couple months ago. I think I put like the minimum of $5. I'll just hold it, and then I'll pick it up that night. But I'm pretty excited about this. One of the other things that was interesting about this is the EA Twitter account released a little statement, said he's searching for something very precious to the Empire. And they kind of tease that, I guess, as part of the main story element. Because and I could be wrong. We've gotten bits and pieces of it. We've seen the trailers, but I'm still not exactly clear what the overall objective of the game is. Like, what are we trying to do? Right? I get the premise of what's happening, but I think what they were trying to do here is just kind of tease that out. But any thoughts around what could be so precious to the Empire?
Precious. It's no, I really don't, because we've read some spoilers, so we gotta be careful what we say. But I don't know, because these games don't necessarily have to fit in with the broader movies or anything like that to where you want to integrate it with something else. But you got to have something to drive it all forward, right? And having a MacGuffin of sorts is a pretty natural, desire to have. But I don't know what would be super important to the Empire at this point, at least that we've known, unless it's going to be something new. But you're right. I think it was more the premise of the story, right? Of being elusive and having some off and on conflicts and maybe growing your powers. And as we've seen some of the gameplay videos, which have looked good, the animations look really sharp, but at the same time, not always very Jedi-like, I guess.
Yeah, it doesn't fit the mold from like the Old Republic or even
right. But it reminds me of like, Masters of Terrascasi, right? With the old PlayStation game, just with all of the different moves you could do. And it was a little over the top, kind of like, what was the Star Killer one? Force Unleashed, right? A little over the top. I mean, it's still a video game, and you got to make it interesting, and you got to have those kind of eye-popping wow moments. And it looks like it's going to deliver on some of that and leverage some of the things that they do well in some other games. But yeah, a lot of people are excited. So I hope it pans out for people. I didn't pre-order this one. I just don't have the time. I never finished Spider-Man. And Spider-Man was a really good game too. I really enjoyed it and just ran out of time.
Yeah. The interesting thing about this game too that makes me wonder is, and there's been a lot of speculation around on the internet, is this going to be, is Cal's fate going to be that of like the Rogue One cast, right? Is he going to come out of this game? And if he does come out of this game, you've got to think his time's limited. Maybe they let him come out of this alive for a sequel or even, a third, a trilogy type video game series. But at some point, you got to think his time's limited. Is that you, or do you think that he gets out of this, or is it Ezra pulling him into the world between worlds and zapped into the future?
I think there's a pretty fair chance he survives, because I think they're looking for a way to build an IP. I mean, they got the Battlefront, and that's had a really mixed, history. And so they're looking for something to hang their hat on. And I think they'll leave this open-ended to where they can do a sequel to it if they wanted to, or something else with it, or something tangentially connected. So I don't see any reason why they'd kill him off.
Mm.
And I mean, the character is young enough, right? And the actor is very popular. He was in Shameless, and he was in Gotham, right? And a couple other things, I think. And so it's a character that, they might want to build around and do something else. And again, you have more of that youthful spirit again, kind of like what we like with Ahsoka and some of those characters.
That's a good point. I could go either way. If whether he dies or lives doesn't matter to me. As long as it's a good story, I'm good.
Yep.
Vader Immortal episode 2 is out today. Like, where did this come from? Like, I hadn't even realized it was out, or that it was even coming out. In fact, I saw the Star Wars show this week. I think it came out yesterday or today. I forget now. But they were talking about it too. Like, the Goots was talking to the two of the developers or writers or whoever they were. I forget now, but she had made the comment that like they surprised everybody with the announcement that it was out today, which seems like a really bad strategy for releasing games. But maybe that's just the par for course for this particular series in VR, because I just don't know how popular it is or how many people are jumping into this thing. But anyways, I got a chance to watch the footage. I watched that particular segment on the Star Wars show, and it looks all very interesting. Looks like you get to use the Force a lot more. I did not play the first one. I heard mixed reviews about the first one. I'm kind of hearing mixed reviews about this one as well. I think the most intriguing part for me is really just the storyline and the lore, because it is technically canon. And it's nice to, my hope is that there are little tidbits of information or lore or Easter eggs that would play out in either comic books or, hopefully maybe like movies, although that never really truly happens with us with Star Wars. But anyways, that's kind of me and my thoughts. What about you? Have you had a chance to look at this thing?
No, not really. And so, if anybody has VR and downloads it and plays it, shoot us a note and let us know what you think and give us some impressions. We'd love to be able to report back on that and, share some of our listeners' experiences on that game, since we're not going to be able to play it.
Yeah, not yet. I thought maybe about getting a VR system this Christmas. I think I'm ready for it.
Think you're ready? All right.
I think I'm ready.
Make it happen.
Take some Dramamine. Be ready to go. Here's one that's for you. Kevin Feige.
Yeah.
Per the Hollywood Reporter, is developing a new Star Wars movie.
Yeah. Producing, I think, technically.
Yeah. Well, it said, the headline, I think, said developing. Then if you read into the article, it looks like he's producing. No mention or word that he's directing or writing, which would be completely different. But just thoughts?
He's officially a Lucasfilm employee. I think I read that one too. The reaction online, I thought people would be more excited about this, but there was a lot of concern about it. And I think some of the concern, I think this is pretty warranted, right? I think it's fair to at least look at it this way, that the Marvel franchise and the Star Wars franchise, I mean, you could say whatever trajectory they're on, but just the concepts of it and what they do are very, very different. And I think some people are now concerned that Kevin Feige doesn't translate well into Star Wars. Now, what I think is a potential positive, though, is what Kevin Feige has been able to do. And this is what gets us excited about this possibility, is that he was able to develop, 22, 23 movies, and create this overarching story that somehow integrated them all in, but still had really good movies all throughout. So that gives you hope that you start to maybe get him in the mix to help build a more, far-reaching strategy, or a little bit longer-term strategy. But a very specific movie, like one movie, is kind of interesting. I mean, everything started with Iron Man too, right? Or well, Iron Man, or maybe Hulk, depending on how you view this type of thing. But I don't mind it. I think it's okay. I think it's kind of a safe move. He's on staff, within Disney, so it makes a lot of sense to go ahead and do this. So why not? But is there any? Which side of the fence did you fall on this one?
I was for it because if you've listened to the show with any regularity, you know that one of our criticisms has been with the sequel trilogy is that it doesn't feel as though they had a true end-to-end strategy in terms of what the main focus, what the story was going to be. And if there's any one thing that you can credit Kevin for, is the fact that, like you said, he was able to put those 22 movies together for the MCU. And it does feel like a long, expansive television series. I mean, a really amazing television series, right? And these are individual movies that pick and pull from one another, and they build upon each other, and they introduce characters, and they've got all this little extra stuff. That stuff is what you would expect from somebody like a George Lucas. And I think this kind of fits that spot. Now, I may be looking too much into this. It could just very well be one movie, or it could be one movie with the goal of seeing how that goes, testing the water, and allowing him to just kind of run with something like that. Right. And I think and I hate to do this because we bring this up all the time, but what if it is like the Old Republic? What if he's given reins to go ahead and just create an old one-shot story and pitch a vision for it? And depending on how that goes, I mean, he has free reign. He's got thousands of years, depending on how far back they go in the timeline, to kind of do whatever the heck he wants to with these stories and tell these stories that have, he doesn't have to rehash all the Old Republic stories. He can tell whatever stories he wants to without really worrying about interfering with the current, original trilogy and then a prequel, original, and sequel trilogy, or even beyond that. So, I think what he brings to the table is that visionary. He's got he's got a long-term strategy. He's proven that. And I think that's something that Star Wars probably could really use.
And I think if you know the content really well, and you know the history of the content, even if it's not necessarily canon anymore, but you can draw on that experience and you can still make something new, just like what we've seen with Marvel, right? You have the basic stories are still there, but how they accomplish it or some of these specific things are very different. And they kind of borrow from the books and they create kind of a newer environment. And I think generally that's what we're kind of looking for. Like, there was some really good stuff that we grew up with. So can we bring some of that into it and make something new? I'm fine with it being new. I don't want to rehash, New Jedi Order or some of that stuff. I'd rather it be something fresh and new, right? But at the same time, you can still borrow some of those concepts that really did work fairly well.
Yeah. No.
Republic
I'm
Commando,
excited
please.
for it. I'd like to see. No, geez.
Dude, it'd be awesome. Get Karen Travis.
No. I'm for it. Whatever he does, I'm willing to give him a chance, right? I mean, this is not like an unproven person in Hollywood or an up and coming kind of guy. This guy's proven himself. Make no mistake about it. So, and he's a huge fan of Star Wars. If you've ever heard him talk about Star Wars, he's right up there, guys. Trust us. He is right up there with the hardcore fans in terms of what he knows. And I mean, he's geeking out with Favreau constantly on Star Wars stuff. So, all right. And then our last bit of news, Bob Iger wrote a book, and Uncle Bob wrote a book called Lessons Learned from 15 Years as CEO of the Walt Disney Company, which I think is now the Guinness Book World Records for longest book title. But this book came out, and there is a particular chapter in here called Chapter 11, Star Wars. And this has garnered quite a bit of controversy because of what is said in there. And essentially, if just to kind of boil it down, he very candidly goes in, and it's a pretty long chapter. I think it's like 40 something, well, not 40, it's like 20 something pages. But he goes into talking about, where they reached out to George Lucas, and he even gets into like, what spurred him on to sit down and even just make the ask of George Lucas, right? Somebody, and I don't want to spoil anything, and I'll tell you why in a second. But he goes out and finally gets the courage to make the ask of, hey, would you ever be interested in selling? And George Lucas very politely says back to him, I'm not ready to do that, but I'm not going to go to anybody else but you when that time comes. So he already kind of goes in knowing that this is an inevitability at some point. And where it gets very controversial is they go ahead and purchase some of the storylines, that the outlines for 7, 8, and 9 that George Lucas put together. they bought the rights to them, but they didn't implement them. Now, some of this we've known, some of this we've heard bits and pieces of, and rumors of rumors, that kind of thing, leading up until obviously this book came out. But this is some pretty good. It doesn't really pull any punches in terms of what happened, and there's almost a. Well, no, I don't want to say too much, and here's why. We're going to do a special episode of CAD. Jonesy, myself, and Mike. We felt this was important to kind of discuss because it is again a bit of a contentious topic, especially right now. And you've probably already seen other videos or seen other comments or posts or wherever you get your Star Wars news from. Maybe even some of the podcasts have already talked about it. But we felt it was prudent to actually read the whole chapter. I bought the entire book, and I'm going to throw this out there for you and Mike. Now, if you guys want, I'll send you a copy of it so you can read it too. But I thought it was prudent that we just read the whole thing beginning to end, at least that particular chapter, rather than just picking and pulling certain pieces from it and kind of talking about it. I think it's important that we take that whole chapter into context and really kind of to paint a really true picture of what Bob Iger was going through, what his thought process, and not just him. Kathleen Kennedy was involved in this as well. JJ is basically, at the end of the day, was JJ, Kathleen, and Iger, who ultimately made the decision to go a different direction, and what became of that, and his perspective on how that played out for him personally in his relationship with George Lucas and what George Lucas was going through. So that's enough of me. But have you had a chance to? I guess, what are your thoughts here? I mean, you and I were commenting just offline on some of the feedback that people were giving, but did you agree with this just so quickly, or is this something that you felt like it was getting kind of blown out of proportion?
It was nothing new, I think, in general. I tend to like memoir books. I like autobiographies. I even like documentaries type on people. And so I was really excited to see this come out because I always like getting people's perspective. And Bob Iger, like you said, he's been there for so long, and the Walt Disney Company is really a pretty complex machine when you look at just how their breadth of thing is. I think just in general, the book is probably going to be pretty interesting. But yeah, I mean, when you see betrayed in like big, bold letters and then things like that with the George Lucas image, it's a bit much because, he reacted certain ways and Bob and them kind of did their own thing. But I think at the end of the day, you're right. I mean, when you're clear about what you're doing and you're pretty transparent about it, as much as any company is, I suppose, it's just kind of what it is. But it's interesting to see the interplay and all the parts and all the moving, and just to see how that story played out and how that timeline worked through. And I think it'd be a really interesting conversation. We're not going to read the chapter to everyone, just to be clear, but we are going to take our time to go through it and kind of pick it apart. And quite honestly, so we're going to do Cantina After Dark. That's what CAD means. It's a Patreon exclusive. And we're going to do that because I'm pretty sure Mike just wants to swear a lot on this topic. So yeah, at your own discretion. So we'll get that here in the next, probably next week or two. Yeah.
I'm looking forward to it. It'd be good to get all three of us back together talking about something like this. Cause I think we all have, I wouldn't say we have varying opinions, but you may be surprised.
I'm constantly surprised at my opinion. Changes like every 5 minutes.
I never know what I'm talking about. So yeah, look forward to that. Patreon people. Thank you, Patreon people too. Okay, so I really wanted to like this comic book. And if you guys had a chance to listen to the episode last week, you know that Mike and I came on, we talked about the first, I don't know, whatever it was, like 5 pages from that StarWars.com had released. And so we're recording this just 2 days after this comic book's come out. And I couldn't wait to get into this thing. And to be honest, I think we talked about it before we came on the air. It's not necessarily a bad comic, but it is, for me personally, it's a huge letdown. And I don't want to be a Debbie Downer about this whole thing, but it really is. It was kind of a letdown. I think I was expecting a lot more given what we had just gotten from Tom Taylor and Leonard Kirk. I mean, they came pretty hot off the Snoke comic book. There was a lot of good material in there, some things that we could speculate and talk about, Cantina Cast style, and we just didn't get a chance to do it with this comic because on the surface, it really wasn't as deep as we thought it would. We were, I guess, hoping that it would be. But that's kind of my just initial thoughts, and we'll dig into this a little bit more. But just I don't know, Jonesy. I already know the answer, but I'm going to turn it over to you. What were you thinking, I guess, or what did you think after you read this one?
Yeah. Disappointment's a pretty good way of putting it. When we got the Snoke comic, and it ended up being a little more Kylo than maybe we wanted from that perspective. But when we shift, and that got us excited, right? So if we're going to get this much Kylo in a Snoke book, then when we get to the Kylo book, we should have all Kylo all the time, right?
Yeah, good point.
And knowing that we were going to get some flavors of Vader in there too, it really got us excited about what we might see. And it didn't hit the mark. I mean, it really didn't give us anything really new to sink our teeth in for Kylo. I think it reinforced some of the things that we already knew. And I think this was one of our criticisms. We didn't do this on air, but when we read the Han Solo comic and the Lando comic, it was kind of the same type of thing. We're forcing some of these characters that we already know. Well, we know those characters really well, but that we know pretty well. We know this side of them, and we're so eager and thirsty for something more than that, right? To just give us a little bit more. And I think Kylo Ren, to everybody who's participated in Star Wars, from the movies to the books and everything else, Kylo Ren is a character that we really do want to learn more about. I mean, he is a character that we care about, even if we're a bit critical of him at times or in different spaces. I think he's a character that we're interested in knowing more about, how he got to where he's at in the movies, and what's his true inner conflict look like, and what are his real motives, and what he wants to achieve, right? And these one shots they can be a terrific opportunity for us to explore those types of things, even if in a very small piece. And so when it doesn't really seem to add much to it, I mean, you can't help but be let down a little bit by it. Now, there were some things that we did like about this. We're going to talk through a couple of things here, but overall, I think that was what I took out of it. Was just it expected a whole lot more, even in a one-shot type story, and it just didn't really deliver it for me.
Yeah, and it's a little complicated. So again, we'll do our best to kind of convey what we're feeling and thinking about the comic. So Tom Taylor is the writer. The name of this particular comic is called Out of the Shadow, and that kind of probably alludes to a few things that we'll touch on here. In the first part of it, again, very promising. It says the son of smuggler Han Solo and Princess Leia Organa, Ben Solo was once one of the most promising of the new generation of Jedi. That is, until his uncle, Jedi Master Luke Skywalker, sensed the dark side in him. Since then, Ben has abandoned the ways of the Jedi. As Kylo Ren of the villainous First Order, he now walks a dark path. Right, so that's the little teaser part of it. And let's do this. Let me read our own little Cantina Cast summary that we wrote up here, and then we can start decomposing this and talking about the stuff that was good and the stuff that wasn't maybe as good. So just to recap, for those of you who've not read the comic book, this is a recap of it. Again, if you've not had a chance to read the book and you're not into spoilers, you might want to just go ahead and turn it off, go read the book. It takes you less than 10, 15 minutes to read it, come back and play this. So here goes the recap. Accompanied by veteran stormtrooper Captain Rutherford of the Galactic Empire, Kylo Ren visits a remote planet in wild space, hopeful in succeeding where his grandfather once failed. Ren and his First Order visit King Kristoff, leader of the proud and stubborn race of beings known as the Ba'nathi, in an attempt at, quote, peaceful negotiations. Following in Darth Vader's shadow, the negotiations fall short, resulting in an all-out war and culminating in Kylo Ren fighting the Ba'nathi's god, a monstrous Zillo beast. Determined not to fail in subduing the Zillo beast, as Vader once did, Kylo Ren submits himself to being eaten by the creature, only to escape using his lightsaber from within inside to cut himself free, killing the beast and earning the will of the Ba'nathi forever. So that's more or less what happens in the comic book. So let's talk first about the things that we liked about the comic book, and then we'll get into the stuff we didn't care so much for. But go ahead, give me I know it's probably a short list, but give me the stuff that you really enjoyed.
Yeah. So outside of the story, I think visually this book is really well done. I think most of the artwork, I only had one criticism, was really at the very end, but the artwork was really done. The colors pop, the action in this and the intensity of some of these scenes are really, really good. And the parallels that they drew between the Vader scenes and the Kylo scenes, I thought were really interesting, especially you have similarities between them, but you have just a little variation between what they have. Maybe Vader's holding a lightsaber one way, Kylo's doing it another. so on and so forth. But you really do have these great, especially these panoramic scenes early on in the book when they first land on the planet, and you see all of the walkers behind them, some of the ships. Vader's got TIE fighters, and both Kylo and Vader are standing a bit on this ledge. I always, it kind of reminds me like the Lion King ledge. I mean, much slower, but you get the idea.
Yeah.
But it was, I think some of those were really well done, and I liked them, even though I didn't necessarily care for why we were going through all of that. But I think visually, though, this book really did a nice job. Again, save one part at the very end, which we'll talk about. Really, the actually last panel, but some of the brutality in some of these images, Albert, was really, really good, especially when Kylo surprises King Kristoff, right?
Yes. Yeah, and he surprises him by igniting his lightsaber right through the middle of his head.
Oh man!
Which speaks. I mean, it's a cool shot, and I think it speaks to maybe the unpredictability. Is that a word? The unpredictability of Kylo Ren. Right, you're not expecting this to happen.
The short temper too, and I think Rutherford called him. He's touchy.
Yeah, he's touchy, and it speaks to the angst. It speaks to a lot of the anger that we see coming into the Force Awakens, and so there's probably a lot that's already happened now, more than just Luke Skywalker and that relationship, right? You got to think Snoke is already in his head, and he's already feeling the pull between the light and the dark. But just that brutality of him, and the way he takes out that particular leader, King Kristoff, is pretty exciting. And I'm with you. There's some great artwork in here. It's cool to see him in his helmet again. I mean, this is the Kylo Ren that we love to hate from The Force Awakens in all his glory. There's some cool little one-liners in here. He chops some guy's legs off, which it's all in shadow, so you don't really get to see it. But he makes a little comment about not so tall without legs, kind of thing. But yeah, I would say, and that's the thing about this comic book. Again, it's not a bad story. It's just it feels like a one-off tale, and maybe that's what they were going for here. But I think our expectations were probably set a little high because of what we had saw with the Snoke comic. But it really truly feels like it's just a side story that kind of shows Kylo Ren in a leadership role, which I thought was probably a positive. We've talked about this before. One of the more many aspects, I should say, of Anakin Skywalker was the fact that he was able to lead his troops into battle, and this is a moment where we finally get to see Kylo Ren do that. We know he was, the leader of the First Order, and not the Supreme Leader, but certainly led his troops. We never really got to see any of that kind of manifest on screen with the Force Awakens, and yet here, I mean, he's leading an entire battalion of First Order troops against this race, and the kind of to your point, when that happens in this comic book, there's some neat parallels. So Vader was here at one point. He tried to do the same thing, and he only got so far, we can assume, as he got as far as a Zillo Beast, but wasn't able to kill the Zillo Beast. And he does. The pencils are really cool because it shows on one side of the panel, on one side of the comic book, because it's kind of if you open up the middle of it, you got one side and the right side. On the left-hand side, it's all of Darth Vader's leading the Empire, and you've got TIE fighters flying over above and that sort of thing. And the right-hand side, you see Kylo Ren doing the exact same thing, and so he's kind of living in the shadow. And so that was kind of neat because you would think that a characteristic like leadership should come naturally to somebody like Kylo Ren, given who his grandfather was. And so that was, I guess, kind of a neat thing, right? To see him leading the troops the way we've seen Anakin do so many times before in the Clone Wars and some of the comics that had come out before.
Sure. Well, and to touch on something you said a minute ago, if you like Kylo Ren to be a badass and to be, see the ragey kind of side and the action oriented, and you like that aspect of Kylo Ren, then you might enjoy this book because there's a lot of that. There is. And I think conversely, though, there's still this kind of stubborn cockiness of unable to let go of or standing in the shadow of Vader, right? And he's unable to really move past that. Which again, I think is, we keep getting that over and over. But, if you like the brutality and the there is no conflict kind of thing within Kylo, and he's just, evil, then this delivers on that front, at least in that piece. And I kind of like that. I like you. I like it that he has the helmet on. He doesn't have it on at the very beginning, and he doesn't have it on the very end, but throughout it, and you get a couple of really great close-ups of the helmet as well. and just the kind of the fierceness and the inspiration it has and the fear it can do too, right? So I think all of those connotations that you get with it, I think were really good and really interesting. It was really fun to see him back with the mask and doing all the things that he did. And just, like I said, just kind of being a badass about it all.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, he takes down the leader of the Banathi, and these guys are huge. I mean, they've got to be like 10 feet tall, 12 feet tall, maybe. And I mean, they're so huge. Like the leader has like a necklace made of stormtrooper helmets, like Imperial stormtrooper helmets around his neck, which, is just kind of, I think he's trying to be intimidating. Think of it like the Predator, if you will, with the skulls around his neck kind of thing. So again, a lot of great visuals here. And I'm trying to think of anything else, if there was anything else that I really enjoyed about the comic book. Maybe not.
No, like I said, I mean, for me, the best thing about this book was the colors and the artwork. Really, hands down, this is actually one of the better, I think, overall products, end-to-end products on from an art standpoint and all the things that encompass the art to date. I think this is really, really well, except that last damn panel.
Well, let's start there with the stuff that we didn't like so much. Yeah. So go ahead. Let it all
so
out,
the last
buddy.
panel, all right. So the very last panel, or the last two panels, we have Kylo Ren taking off his helmet, which I don't understand why we go to that effort. He's just come out of the Zillo Beast, right? He's screaming to the legions of the Banathi and who are kneeling to him. He's drenched in blood. He's looking awesome, right? He's feeling great. And then he's going to go and take his helmet off. So from a story perspective, I don't understand why you do that. And then to make matters a little worse, and there are a lot of people who, like the attractiveness of Kylo or of Ben or whatever you want to call him, but he takes his helmet off and his hair is perfectly coiffed and wavy. And then he has this like really sly grin on his face, right? So the context of the scene is basically Rutherford early on was saying, you can't prove anything to a dead man, right? As Kylo was trying to prove his worth, that succeed where Vader was unable to, right? Mm-hmm. And it's not a competition. Well, at the end, of course, he comes back and says, hey, could you know whenever I told you it wasn't a competition? Well, you won. And then Kylo gives him a sly little smirk that he can't see, right? You can see it front and center in the scene. But that alone, just, I don't understand why we had to have that moment of seeing his face and seeing the smile, unless they just wanted to show the smug satisfaction of Kylo. But quite honestly, it really pulled me out of the moment, if you will, his moment of complete glory and triumph as Kylo Ren. And we get pulled back to more of a Ben Solo type of thing. And I get you can draw a lot in there if you want to. But for me, from just a story aspect, it really it really jarred me out of it. And it really felt out of place for me. Did any of that make sense for you? Or
no, it does. And I'm with you. It did feel maybe a little bit out of character. Maybe not so much if you looked at it, if you think about Kylo Ren from the perspective of The Last Jedi, it doesn't. But I think if you think of Kylo Ren from the perspective of where he was in The Force Awakens and probably prior to, you're right. I think it would have been more powerful to see him standing there with the mask, right? If he's really kind of living up to Vader's or trying to break out from Vader's shadow, that might be a way to kind of cement himself, especially in front of these people that he's now, dominated and told them that they now follow the First Order. I wouldn't expect him to take his helmet off, right? I think that's just something that perpetual kind of intimidation. The reason why he's wearing the helmet is for that reason. It just feels like out of character. It kind of does pull you out. And I don't really understand why they did the smirk. I mean, other than to show that, haha, see, I am better than Vader kind of thing. But I think you could have. You get that without him taking the helmet off, right? He very clearly is able to do more than Vader did. We did the Snoke comic. The very last panel in the Snoke comic has Snoke smirking very similar to this. So I don't know if they were trying to draw a parallel there, or in some way. But again, I'm with you. I don't know that it was really needed, especially how powerful that moment was with him, going through all this battle and killing the Zillo Beast, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, God, he finally has his moment of triumph, right? And then you want to humanize him. The whole point of the book was to make him more this almost legend status. And then we humanize him. And usually that's a great thing. But in this case, it just really didn't seem to fit. And that was a little bit disappointing because I want to see the rise of Kylo Ren. I don't necessarily want to see and get dragged back into Ben Solo at this moment in time. I think there's a place for that. But this comic, I don't think was the right place for that at this point.
Okay. That's fair.
Right. So let's do it. I'll tell you what, I'm going to ask you a question here because I know you had a bit of an issue with Rutherford, right? So what were your expectations with Rutherford coming into this thing? The captain, the stormtrooper, he's an old guard from the Empire days, still alive, and he's accompanying them. But what were your initial expectations of him?
Well, and this is probably the one thing that was a big letdown for me, more than the sly smirk and more the way more than how he killed the Zilla Beast, which we'll get to in a second. What got me really excited about this was the fact that it starts off with this Captain Rutherford guy who is a seasoned veteran. I mean, he's got scars. He looks like he's battle worn. He's still wearing the old stormtrooper armor. He's not even wearing First Order armor. And the way the story goes is Rutherford had been here with Vader at one point. And so I was really hoping, especially since we had read the preview last week, I was really hoping that this was going to be a dimension of Kylo Ren that we hadn't seen, that somehow he was wise enough to look to his elders or to those that have done more, been through more than he was, and was kind of leaning on this veteran to be able to help him. Like he would be seeking his advice or something. I thought we were going to get that dynamic of Kylo Ren because up until now, it doesn't really appear that we've got anything, right? He just kind of runs with whatever he does, and he is the number one. So I was thinking, wow, this is really neat that he would be so wise to lean on somebody like this. And you kind of get that sense up until we get to the planet. So they get to the planet, and at that point, this guy really is not here for any other reason than to make snarky comments about Kylo Ren. And you never see him lean into the wisdom of Rutherford in any way. He's just there in the background. And even all the way through the comic book, all the way to the very end, he does nothing. We don't get to see him lead the troops. We don't really, again, Kylo Ren's not looking to him for advice. He's not looking to him to lead. He's just kind of there because he has some familiarity with the Benothi and the fact that he had been there with Vader at one point years ago. So that was kind of a letdown. I just really was hoping that we were going to see this guy step up to help Kylo Ren in some way, or at least Kylo Ren, more importantly, would be reaching out for him, which we never saw.
Right. Yeah, I think when you feature a character in the first few pages of a comic, just like when you feature someone in the first few pages of a book or a scene in a movie, things like that, right? You expect to learn something important about in that moment that will come back and be relevant later on, right? You can think about any kind of movie that sets up a tragedy at the beginning, right? It's going to impact somebody a little bit later on, those types of things. But when they set him up here and we develop that expectation that we're going to have something, and then for him to basically disappear into the background, it is a bit disappointing. I mean, that's something that what purpose did we serve except to fill a few pages and to have someone go tell Kylo Ren that they'd arrived at the planet? That's the part that, again, it just doesn't, it's inconsistent with I don't want to call it good storytelling but just, it's inconsistent with what we would expect, if we started to get expectation, and you said it perfectly before, maybe our expectations were not where they should be. So let's just kind of put that out there and get that out of the way for now. But I think on some level, you're right. The grizzled veteran, we kind of expected to maybe we would have something akin, not the same, but akin to what we had with Anakin and Rex, right? I think some folks around the Star Wars circles had hoped to have some sort of dynamic like that. And it's okay for Kylo to not have that dynamic with someone because, again, he's trying to split ways from how Vader did things. And we don't necessarily believe that Vader had a right-hand man like he did in the Clone Wars. But, the same idea, though, that he would be able to lean on someone. But, when you just have the character disappear and really become nothing, like you said, and except a couple of liners and to fill in little story gaps, basically, or really fill in the backstory of Vader's failure or interpretation of the scenes and the parallels between them. Aside from that, it doesn't really seem like he brings any value to what we're reading through. And I think that's unfortunate. You would like to see a character from the Empire that's still alive have something of use besides kind of being a keeper of a story. All it is.
And to be fair, there is one moment one moment where he asks him, Kylo Ren says, "What do I need to know about the Benathi?" And Rutherford says, "They're a proud race, stubborn. They value size and strength above all else." And then Kylo Ren retorts, "Which is why I have come." And then his response to that is, "Oh." So it almost like he marginalizes what wisdom and value he's even bringing. So that's really the only moment in here. I mean, they have some little dialogue prior to that, but that's the only moment that Kylo Ren actually reaches out to him. And again, it's marginalized. So I don't know. I wish he would have done more. There could have been more. I wish he would have been a bigger player in the comic book, even though it is Kylo Ren's. All right, let me touch on the other thing that I had a problem with. I know it's going to sound minor, but this whole, the way Kylo Ren, so Zillo Beasts, for those of you who don't know, we saw them in the Clone Wars. I think they've been in some other comic books, or at least mentioned in some of the other books as well. For all intents and purposes, their armor is like impenetrable. You know, I don't even think lightsabers are able to penetrate the Zillo Beast armor. And so the fact that Kylo Ren took him out the way he did, it makes sense, but at the same time, we've seen this so many times. It just felt very unoriginal. And again, he jumps into the mouth of the Zillo Beast. Everyone thinks that Kylo Ren's been eaten. I'm sure you've seen this movie before, right? Everybody thinks he's been eaten, and then he cuts his way out. I mean, more recently, Guardians of the Galaxy 2 and Drax, we saw it there. You could talk about the Hercules cartoon from the 90s, where he jumps into the Hydra and cuts the heads off and all that.
Remember when Obi-Wan did it with Dirge in the original Clone Wars?
I don't remember that.
Yeah, he jumps in and all of a sudden all these weird bulges came out and then he force explodes him.
Yeah, so and it's been done many times and over again. It's a very played out trope, and I don't know. I guess it was really cool, especially all the way Kylo Ren looks and
when he's
fighting him.
When he's coming out of the beast, that's a sick like panel right there. I mean, it's kind of gross looking, but it's really cool. Like really, really, really cool. You get this rip text and he's coming out of the stomach and he's got stuff all over him. I mean, it's really cool image though.
Yeah.
And I guess it makes a little bit of sense, right? If you're going against a race that values strength and size, like how else would you, that's the thing though. They're not there to gain the trust and support or whatever of these creatures. They just want them to stop expanding because they're threatening the First Order. Sorry to deviate, but sorry. It was just a thought. I was like, man, it's inconsistent.
Yeah. No, sorry. We probably should have touched on that. The whole reason they're here is because this race is going around kind of planet hopping and just conquering and destroying everything that's on these different planets. And the First Order sees them as a threat. And so they want to, stop them, subdue them, make them succumb to their will so that they'll be part of the First Order rather than starting their own crusade kind of thing.
The Zillo Beast, I didn't really have too much of a problem with it because, again, what do you do when you have something has impenetrable
there's no
armor?
other option.
You got to do something. And was it swallowing Kylo Ren and cutting his way out? Maybe not. But I think overall, I didn't really have too much of an issue with that one. I mean, you had to take him out some way. And I guess what we got visually, I think makes up, at least for me, I think makes up a little bit for the maybe lack of originality, I guess, maybe to your point.
Yeah.
But still reasonably satisfying given what we got visually. And you can't have a long drawn out story of coming up with some really amazing plan, right? So he is a Skywalker, if you will, and taking a leap of faith, literally out of a shuttle to do this seems in character for the Skywalker lineage, at least paralleling with Anakin and Vader.
Yeah. All right. So let's wrap it up with this. I guess the two questions that we try to ask ourselves when we read these comic books, because we really necessarily don't want to do a review of the comics, although that's kind of what this sounded like. What we really try to do, and this was the problem that we had with the book, is there wasn't a whole lot to dig our teeth into from speculation and kind of story kind of thing, or kind of theory. But the two questions that we always try to ask ourselves is, what did we learn about the main character that we didn't know already, and what was the purpose of the story? What was it trying to teach us? And I think for the first one, I don't know that we really learned a whole lot about Kylo Ren. I think we got to see what we probably already knew but have never seen. That's probably fair to say. But in terms of his growth and dynamic, living in his shadow, we already kind of knew that was the case to some extent. I don't know that there was a whole lot there. I don't know. And same thing with the second the second question, which is what's the purpose of the story? To show that he was trying to get out of the shadow of Vader, trying to set himself apart, to kind of find his own way, to be his own leader, to be, more than Vader was. But beyond that, again, there wasn't a whole lot here. At least in my opinion, it wasn't very deep.
Right. And I think they could have made a couple of tweaks for the latter point, the story aspect. I think they could have made a couple of tweaks where you don't really you can keep the way the story is and just, because it's not a bad story, right? We had different expectations about what else it might have been, rather than maybe not what could have been, what else it should have been. If we take that out of the loop and we just look at the story itself, it's not a bad story. It's got a couple of inconsistencies. And I think if you were able to tweak just a couple of things, the story really does okay as a one-off of just showing his power. I think within the interior of the story, I would have liked them to change a little bit about how he goes about things, and without messing with his character too much, but just something to make it a little more interesting and give him a little more credibility, I think is what we were looking for. If you want to push Kylo Ren forward, give him that credibility, give him that strength, and don't take it away from him or kind of slice a little part off after you've given it to him. And I think from that respect, if they would have just really kept with that clean push, this could have still been pretty enjoyable. And even if it wasn't what we were hoping for, it still would have been, okay, this isn't bad. It's not anything, like you said, it's nothing we're really learning new or really getting deep into the details of, but not a bad story, not a bad one-off. It's a one-shot after all for 20 something pages, and it was okay. But, but when you do that, and then you have when you have a throwaway character, it just feels like it's just it's just missing the target a bit.
Yeah, that's fair. All right. Well, I'm tired of being negative.
We love the art though.
Yeah, we love the art. And again, if you're a big Kylo Ren fan, you probably have to pick this up. Whether you're, especially if you just want to see him and what he's capable of doing, as a leader and certainly as a wielder of the dark side. It's kind of cool to watch. All right. Well, that'll end that. Let's, we got any shout outs?
Yeah. Chunky Wookie is back over on the Discord server. So welcome back.
Welcome back.
Yeah. And then we got an amazing email from Mark Bursmeyer. And I believe he is oh my God, I always get his name wrong. Firefox or Firestorm. Sorry, dude. Anyway, he gave us a really cool email on, I think, really responding to you and Mike's show. And we're going to save that for a listener feedback and question show so that we can dig into a little more of those details. So again, a little more episode 9 discussion coming up from Mark. So we appreciate you reaching out to us there.
Yep. Now we'll hit that up, which segues perfectly into, we'll just talk about next week. We're going to do a listener feedback show. We will get some stuff out on social media and in Discord this weekend at some point. But please send us any questions that you might have that you want us to answer. The Ben Demption thing is pretty hot. I think we've got a lot of great feedback from the show that we just did on that. So if you've got some thoughts or theories or questions around that, feel free to do so. Send them our way, or anything really. Send it over to us and we'll get that taken care of here a little bit later in the next week. So, and then also, if you want to get a hold of us, you can send us, much like Mark did, you can send us an email at cantinacastfanmail@gmail.com. You can find us on Twitter and Instagram at Cantinacast, or is it the Cantinacast?
I think it's the Cantinacast. Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry. At the Cantinacast. I don't ever tweet. It's like your phone number. Somebody asks you, I'm like, I have no idea. I don't ever call myself.
All right.
Yeah. At the Cantinacast. We're also on Facebook. We're on Discord. We'll put the links all in the show notes. Join us there. We have daily conversations with people about Star Wars and sometimes other stuff as well. And then obviously, I guess we've got Patreon coming up. We talked about that. We teased the episode we've got coming that we're going to talk about Bob Iger's book as a reminder. But for Patreon, I think that's $2 for Cantina After Dark.
Right. Yeah. $2 for Cantina After Dark.
Yeah. So we'll record that here very soon and you can get that. Also, if you, even at the $1 rate, you get the episodes a little early and you support the show, help keep the lights on. Yeah, that's always a good thing. So thank you guys for all of our Patreon members that are here and all our soon to be Patreon members as well.
Yeah. On the EGM side, the film appraisers had Morgan back, who is course, one of our favorite people, and they are talking about Galaxy Quest, which of course is a spoof of Star Trek, but actually really well done and an amazing cast. Actually, when you look at this cast, like Alan Rickman, Sam Rockwell, Tim Allen, Sigourney Weaver. I mean, this is like this must be epic for you.
No, yeah. I mean, honestly, in that movie, not to derail or anything, but that movie, when it came out, there were a lot of people that didn't think that movie was going to do well, and it surprised a lot of folks. It was pretty popular. It still continues to be popular and still relevant. I mean, the comedies stands up. Hopefully, they agree with me here, but it does feel like a lot of the comedy in there kind of still holds up even today, as old as that movie was, because I think it came out like in, 95 or, I don't know, it was in the 90s maybe, but it's been a while since that movie's been out, so I may be wrong. But anyway, yeah, check them out. Good stuff coming from those guys as always. All right, that's going to do it for us here. Anything before we go?
No, man, let's get out of here before another Zilla Beast attacks.
Okay, we'll jump in the mouth. So, all right, we'll see you guys next week on the Feedback Show.
You're still listening? Wow, that's amazing. Well, I'm here to give you the disclaimer. Normally we do a big, long, drawn-out disclaimer thing saying what's what and who's what and all that other stuff, but I think you guys kind of know that Lucasfilm and Disney have no affiliation with us at all, and we have none with them. We talk about Star Wars, which is their property, and all that other good, fun stuff, but I think you can tell which is our stuff and which is their stuff. If you can't, well, then send a lawyer to send an email to me, and I'll be glad to chat with them. Other than that, you know what's what, so that's your disclaimer.
Oh, we're probably being way too harsh. It's not that bad, but it's bad.
Yeah, this comic is garbage.
Yeah, this is why Mike doesn't like comics. This is
a great example of why. Yeah,
a great example of why he doesn't like comic books. All right, let's see if we can knock this out in 5 minutes. You ready?
Yeah. We may stretch it to 7.
Oh, stretch it to 7.